and welcome to episode 20 of the Knitting Teaspoon podcast. I'm Liesbeth, your host, and thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you so much for checking me out if this is your first time watching, and thank you so much for coming back to me if you've been watching for a while. Let's get into what I've been doing this week. This is a podcast which is all about my knitting and sewing and all the other crafts that I occasionally do, but usually there's a bit of knitting and, well, I guess more often than not there's sewing and sometimes there's other crafts. Who knows? This week not too exciting, but you guys will see the elephant in the room, and you may already have seen a picture of this cardigan on Instagram if you follow me there. I'm at knitting_teaspoon there, but I still needed to weave in the ends when I posted that picture, but it is finished and I'm wearing my XOX cabled cardigan, for which I do not have a better name. So if you have a better name suggestion for this cardigan, please let me know. I would be so excited to hear about this. Last week I think I had joined the sleeves to the bodice part, but I wasn't entirely finished. I actually hadn't got a clue yet of how I would do the decreases, and I think it worked out very nicely. I don't know how well you will be able to see this, but I'm quite happy with it. It involved I think it was a 3 or maybe 4 stitch wide, how do you call this? 3 needle bind off at the top of the shoulder, and then I knit the cable all the way around until halfway on the back. I will just turn around and I hope you guys will be able to see what it looks like. This feels really awkward, but here I've joined those pieces. And then from there, I picked up a line along the cardigan and knit on a button band. And oh my god, you guys, I cast on using a tubular cast on, and I've used this method before. And I also had to do a matching bind off, which essentially is taking a very long tail and using that to kind of sew through all your stitches with a darning needle. And it was such a long tail, and this yarn is quite rustic, so it tends to stick to each other, and I really like that because it probably means that my garment is going to stay in shape a little bit better, because the wool will actually felt together a little bit, I guess. I don't know. I haven't. I've never used this yarn before, so who knows? We will see. But I, from experience with similar yarns, it will kind of like become one fabric instead of like stay very defined individual stitches. Yeah, and that's really nice to keep the structure in your garment, but it's not so nice if you have to sew like very long tails through tiny loops, because you need to pull a little bit more. And I started doing this bind off when I was at my boyfriend's parents last weekend, and I didn't have my darning needle with me, so I started there. I borrowed one from his mom, because she's also a knitter, and she does have those kinds of things right on the coffee table in the middle of the living room. So that's a very good thing about dating a knitter's son, I guess. Well, I think it's past dating because we live together, but I could borrow one. But then on the way back, I didn't have any other knitting really to do with me, and I tried to do it with a crochet hook, but something just didn't turn out right when I tried this. So so I ended up ripping back a bit, which of course added to my frustration, because you are working with a very long tail and you spent all this time getting it through there, and then you see like, this doesn't. For those of you who don't know, a tubular cast on or cast off. This is a cast on, but it looks similar in the bind off. It looks like the stitches, they roll over, kind of over the edge. So to create this kind of effect, it's important to pull yarns in the right directions. And somehow I really thought that I had thought it through what I would do with the irregular needle. But I did something else with the crochet hook that I had with me. So I had to rip back a bit, like rip back an hour's work and then do it again, which probably took me about an hour again. So that was not so much fun. But it's finished now. And I picked up these buttons last week. They were really cheap and it was in a gorgeous store. I would really recommend the store. It's called Het Goedkope Huis in Weert. It is a shop where they sell fabrics and buttons, and really a lot of buttons actually. And it is a big store and it is so well organized. My local fabric store is like really cram-packed with all the fabrics, so there's like these tiny walkways in between, so if you want to pass someone, you really have to shift your body to be able to fit through the walkways. They do have an amazing selection, but most of the times you can't find it because it's covered in all kinds of other fabrics, or you're just so overwhelmed with everything that they have that you don't find the one piece that you find and that you are looking for. I'm going to take this cardigan off because it is warm. It is hot, you guys. So let's get it off, so then I can also show you the buttons from a little bit more up close. They are nice and structured metal buttons. I don't know a brand name or anything of these buttons. I just bought them in a store and I like them. So that's what they are. I don't think there's a particular upside or downside of these buttons. I don't think so. Do you see anything? I don't know. But they were so cheap. They were like 20 cents per piece, so for €3. I don't know what that would translate to, but I think, well, there's not even a factor 2 difference between euros and dollars at the moment, or Australian dollars or pounds, so somewhere around $3 or pounds in price for buttons. And I did not just buy these, I bought some extras because I thought I'm probably going to lose one at some point, and I didn't like the idea of that, of not having similar buttons anymore. And I didn't know when I bought the buttons how many buttons I was actually going to use, so good reason to buy some extra. So this is where I joined in on the back of the cardigan, so you can see that the cable, well, is interrupted here, but I think it looks quite nicely. I'm really happy with how the shoulders turned out on this cardigan. So this is my XOX cables cardigan. I think I'm going to write up the design. The only thing that I might change is add a bit of length to the body because it's slightly on the shorter side. I'm going to try and see if I want to wash it, or what it does after washing, because it might grow a little bit, but I think it could use some extra length. Of course, adding extra length to a cardigan is usually not really the most difficult modification, especially if you can do this before the waist shaping, because I feel like the waist shaping is actually quite good in its place. So yeah, I'm really happy with how it turned out. I'm going to write up the design and publish it. I haven't got a clue of about how long this is going to take me, so it may take maybe more than half a year or so before I write it up, because I did a sweater last year. For long time viewers of the podcast, you will know the interlock sweater that I've been wearing, the rainbow colored one, maybe. For those of you who aren't quite sure what it looked like anymore, I will leave a link to an episode, or leave the episode number in the description box that directs you to one episode where I'm wearing it, because I'm pretty sure that I wore this sweater on, I think, episode 4 or 5. I think the one with the Star Wars head. That's probably the title. But yeah, you guys will see it probably in the description box here in the video, and then also in the description box on YouTube. So after you finished watching the episode, you could check it out if you want to. So yeah, it's finished and I'm really happy with it, and it's probably going to end up in my closet for a while, because you guys, it has been so hot here. This is my XOX cabled cardigan, and I'm really happy with it. It is out of Tuanti Prijvel, which is Tuanti wool, knitting yarn, and it's a yarn that is produced locally to where I was born, so not where I currently live in Eindhoven, which is in the south of the Netherlands, and I lived more to the northeast from here, but it's not really the north of the Netherlands either, just in the Middle East. That sounds wrong. That sounds like a different region, not in the Netherlands, but the Middle East of the Netherlands. Let's call it that way. Who knows? But yeah, so I'm going to have a quick look for the label of this yarn. Oh, yes. So here's a little label of the yarn. So it's Prijvel from Twente and Achterhoek, which are both regions in the Netherlands. And yeah, it's a natural color of the sheep, and I believe these are Blauwe Tesselaar sheep, but I'm not really sure about that. The label doesn't provide you with any information on gauge or anything, or recommended gauge for this yarn. So the shopkeeper where I bought this, I think it was at the Breivik in Hengelo. She wrote it down on this label, and I'm a bit off with my gauge. My gauge was 16 stitches and 29 rows, but then I also used different needles than were recommended, because she says that she gets 16 stitches when using needle 5 millimeter needles, and I used 4 millimeter needles, and I got practically the same gauge. So my row gauge was a little bit less, but my stitch gauge was about the same. But then again, I didn't knit stockinette, so who knows, maybe my gauge is closer to this. I am a looser knitter in general, so yeah, I don't know. Also, the gauge on the cable is different from the gauge on the rest of the cardigan. But I really liked using this yarn, and to me it is so special that that it's from the local area where I was born. So that's very nice. And you can see that I still have a bit left. This is not a full skein. I think it's about 80 grams, so I could have knit the cardigan longer in hindsight. I can't do that anymore now because I knitted bottom up, as you may have seen if you have been watching for a while. Although technically it is probably possible to add in a piece of length, but I'm not going to do that. I can't be bothered. But I want to try dyeing this yarn, so yeah, it would be fun to try and see what this will turn out like if I over dye it, like with some blue or red. It could be a lot of fun to work with this. So yeah, I feel like it could be my mission to work with the locally sourced yarn. But then again, I'm not sure if they are okay with that, because I don't live in the region anymore, and I'm not really sure if I would want to use like natural dyes instead of acid dyes, because I feel like you would need something strong, very powerful colors to dye something that already has this dark of color to start off with, although they do have some lighter bases as well on their website. But I would like to see if they would like maybe offer a wholesale discount and support a yarn dyeing business with this wool. But then again, I don't know if there's any demand for this kind of rustic yarn, and my skills in dyeing yarn are very limited, as you can see from the pile over here. So if you haven't watched this podcast before, here's my pile of skeins that I've dyed myself on Drops Fable yarn. And let's use that as a bridge to go into the next project, because I've also been knitting on my blanket, as I always do when I go to my knit group. And I went to my knit group yesterday, because yesterday was Thursday, and on Thursday evenings I have knit night. So last week I had just started the little gray square here in this corner, and yesterday I finished the square and added the black one, and then added the yellow section. And you guys, it's such a perfect knitting project for a knit group, because it is easy. It is plain stock net. Occasionally I have to pick up stitches, so then there's a little bit of brain power involved in working on it. But this, especially because this blanket is modular for a part, so I can knit pieces that will not become bigger than this, and then I can leave those pieces at home. I still need to weave in the ends. Yes, I'm not very good at that. And then I can leave it until I need to fill out the center part. The center part is a little bit trickier, so I will probably postpone that until winter. But for now, it's not winter. It's not winter yet, and I also am not at the part yet where I have to work on the center part. So it's okay. So my blanket has seen a little bit of progress, but because it's not that much progress since last time, I'm not going to talk about it too much this week, because you guys have probably seen this blanket by now. I will add in a picture here so that you guys can look at it if you don't know what I'm talking about. There are some more of these squares finished since I took the picture, and I'm not going to be bothered with taking another picture, because this picture is just meant to give you a general idea of what the blanket looks like. And I think taking a proper picture just takes a little bit of time, and I'm busy enough as it is. So there has been one more knitting project, and I told you guys last week that I was fed up with my pink socks that I was working on, the mermaid socks, and it's nothing to do with the yarn. It's just I do have this design idea in mind, and it's not coming out at this moment, so I decided to skip out on a little bit of frustration and just start something that I am really feeling at the moment. And this project is living in the bag where I think the knitting was living previously, my other sock, but it's living in my bag. I make these kinds of bags. You will see a little bit more about that in the sewing segment of this week. But I cast on a new sock, but I have cast on 2 socks at the same time, so I'm knitting 2 at a time socks now. Apparently. I never thought I would, but I'm knitting these 2 at the same time. And I'm also designing a pattern on it, so that's why I decided to try and do it two at the same time. They are not perfect. I know I've made a little bit of mistake in the pattern, and I've decided to do it slightly different on the top than on the bottom, but for now this is just a project where I play around with the design, and then if I decide that I like this leafy lacy pattern on my socks, then maybe I'll write up a pattern. Maybe I won't, we will see, but I will probably knit another pair of socks if I decide to write up a design. Who knows? But this yarn, some of you will probably recognize this yarn because I gifted this yarn to myself for my birthday last year, which was this year, which was in March, and it's Lily Pond yarns in their teal tussle colorway. I don't know if they still make this color, but yeah, it is gorgeous. It is really my color. I do like the way it is almost solid, but not really, because there's some of the tonal striping going on that you usually see in hand-dyed yarns, and I love that about this. And this is, I might say this is slightly more of a minty green color than an actual teal, but I don't know. Also, I don't know what tussle means, so who knows. Yeah, I really like these socks, and these it's actually quite a funny story. On Monday I had another job interview kind of thing, so before that I knew that I didn't want to knit on my pink socks anymore, which I've just taken the needles out and paused and put out of my sight so that I wouldn't be reminded with them. And then I started winding up the hank of yarn into two little balls because I knew that I wanted to try doing this. But then there were some mails coming in, and I was trying to answer those mails, and it took a little bit more time. And then and at the end I was really fast trying to wind the little balls to have some knitting with me, because I could of course have taken a skein that I wouldn't need to ball up first, but I didn't feel like starting another project first, so I passed on in the train on my way to an appointment. And yeah, so this is one of the skeins, and sometimes like the little bit comes loose, but usually it's not more than in one direction, so it's okay. And I have two of these balls in here, and then with this kind of bag, I have the yarn coming out from two sides. I don't know how well you will be able to see this, but the yarn from one ball gets out on one side, and then the other yarn comes from the other side, and then I will take the large handle, pull it through the smaller handle, and I can pull it around my wrist, and there you have the two yarns that are not going to get messed together here. So that's nice when you're knitting from it. So I was about to tell you something about my my socks and the knitting two at a time when I got a phone call interruption. This was just my boyfriend calling, but I'm leaving my phone on because I might get news from my job applications from this week, so I wouldn't want to miss a phone call about that. So, but you can kind of see here that my tension is a bit weird. Some stitches, they seem to lean a bit weird. Oh, it's more visible on this sock. And I don't think this has anything to do with the yarn or anything. It's just my struggles of knitting two at a time. Yeah, I have to get used to it. Or I don't have to get used to it because I don't have to knit two at a time socks. But I'm okay with it for now, and yeah, it's kind of working, but I don't like the preparation that you have to do for 2 at a time socks. Like winding up two skeins of yarn. Like I sat there hurrying for my appointment, and then at the same time, like I had measured or I had weighed how much the weight was of the hank. And it was a generous hank, so thank you, Lily Pond Yarns. But yeah, I sat there and I was weighing my skein, and I was like, I had to go to 53 grams to get to the halfway point, and yeah, there you are, winding away, and you think, oh, this might be almost half of the amount of yarn that you have wrapped around you to ball up, and then you put it on scale, and it's 35 grams. So you think like, yeah, I need to do quite a bit of more winding. Well, 38. Okay, well, continue, and then I've been measuring so often. Yeah, I didn't like the kind of preparation, but if I knit again from like 2 separate balls of commercial yarn, like the 50-gram balls, maybe I will knit 2 at a time. But then still, most of the times I don't want to knit as high socks as this, because this I want to knit up the full skein and then enter this project for the one skein along that Lily Pond Yarns have announced on their podcast. So this is going to be my entry. I will put a post in your forum as well on Ravelry. But yeah, it's going well so far. And I'm just playing around with it, and I'm okay with using this pretty yarn for a design project, and especially that there's flaws in my design that are like in the well, closest to the toe part of the foot. That's okay, because you know, I'm only going to show those parts of my socks when I'm in a place where I'm walking on socks and not cover them in shoes. So no one is going to see those mistakes, I say, or they're not really mistakes. They're design choices that I've improved later on. So it's not really a mistake, I think. But yeah, no one is going to see them unless I'm in a place where I'm comfortable enough to wear just socks, and I'm okay with it. So that's okay. Well, yeah, I haven't got a clue what my sock gauge is actually, because I would, you know, it's so tempting to just say that I'm knitting these on 2mm or US 0 higher sharps, and that's what I'm doing, but it's not really relevant because you guys wouldn't know if you would get the same result on the same needles. But then again, you can't knit the same socks, or maybe you could, I don't know. Because I'm designing this pattern and it's not written out yet. So I would like to say what kind of gauge I got on these socks, but honestly I don't know, because I know that with the gauge that I usually get with sock yarns on these needles, I get, and this number of stitches, I get socks that fit my feet. I don't care what gauge I have on my socks, because I know that it's usually approximately the same, and that I will be able to wear my socks, and that's all that matters to me, really. So yeah, I'm not going to stress needle size either. If you guys want to know, it's probably on my Ravelry page, except that I don't put in my sock gauge, but because why would I measure them if I'm knitting something for myself and from my own pattern? And well, maybe for in design things, it's nice to write down what my gauge is, so that if someone else would want to reproduce these socks, that they could. But I think everyone has different size of feet, and also a slightly different gauge, so it's going to be tough to perfectly reproduce these socks. I know, for instance, that I'm quite a loose knitter, but if you are an even looser knitter, there's a fair chance that you can't find needles to get the kind of gauge that I have, because I'm I'm really looking for needles that are smaller, and I know that Chaogu has smaller needles, but unfortunately it's really difficult to get those needles here. So I've been waiting for quite a long time because my local yarn shop is trying to get those, but oh my god, she has had some struggles, and I really feel for her because I know that she's trying her best to get us the best stuff, but yeah, it's not going to be easy to get the Chaogu needles. So that's all I wanted to state about these socks, and they are almost to the point of increasing for the heel because I always do a little gusset before I do the heel, and yeah, so my new work in progress, and I should make a Ravelry page for this this little project, but I really like it. I enjoy working on it on a daily basis. So apart from buying buttons last week, I also went to a store in Weert where they sold embroidery stuff. So I bought some embroidery floss there, but more importantly, I bought some stuff to help me keep my embroidery floss organized. So I bought these plastic things that I can just put in an organizer, and they have all these blue plastic things here, so they are shaped like this, and you can just put it like put one end of the embroidery floss around here and then just bend it so that you can fit the other end over here, and then you can of course you would need to shift off the label already before you do this, and then you can put on a tag that says the color number on this part of the well, thing. I don't know how this thing would be called in Dutch, and I definitely don't know how it would be called in English, but I'm just going to go for embroidery floss organizer, and I'm so happy with that because I had a huge stash of embroidery floss from my mom and my grandma, and it is just such a mess. It was such a pain to start working with it, so I was looking for colors to start embroidering something, and I really couldn't find the right colors, and I didn't know if they all had the same shine, so I didn't know if they were all like DMC embroidery floss, because this embroidery floss that's in the organizers, it's all DMC embroidery floss, but I happen to also have a lot of anchor floss, and I also had a lot of these these things, just the labels that tell you which number, but I don't know to which color they belong. And basically I had just one big knot of embroidery floss in this little tin. I do really like this tin. I don't think I actually have a lid for this tin, but that doesn't matter. But I will insert a picture here of what it looked like when I started working on it, and now it is organized like this, you guys. I'm so happy with having this organized. So I have these little cardboard pieces. I also got them at the same store, and then you can like put one end through the cardboard here, and then just wrap the yarn around the center part, and on some of them I've written a colorway number if I happened to know it, but for most of the yarn or the pieces of floss I didn't know what it was called or what the number was, so I put just some random scraps that I had a little bit of here. I also threw out a lot of pieces that were just too short or weren't shiny at all, so I knew that they were some kind of cheap other brand. I don't know. But I wasn't really happy with that. So now I have organized my embroidery floss stash, and I'm so happy with it. And that's why I decided not to do anything with it after that. But it felt so zen to just organize my big knot of nightmares and then just have it organized and something that I could actually use if I wanted to. So I'm going to put this aside as well, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the last project after I've taken a little sip of water because it is hot. So I've been working a little bit more on making project bags, and this week I've added this project bag to the collection of things that I will put in my store. This makes for 10 items that I could put on sale, and I know that it is very bright, but I wanted to give you guys something else to choose. Like, all of the other project bags that I have are very blue. And if blue is just not your color, I wanted to put in something just slightly different. This might be a little bit in your face, all over the place colors, but I really like the brightness of this. I'm going to make a few more of these bags, not necessarily all orange and yellow and red, but they're all going to have like the red inside, and I think I'm going to make some that only have yellow on the top and only have orange on the top. And I feel like some things are really getting easier to do, like the top stitching. It's getting a cleaner look. I can still see some progression, and my labels have arrived, so my bags will from now on state that they are made by the Knitting Teaspoon, which is my alias by now. So yeah, I really liked adding that little label. I did choose for a blue color there, so you're not going to get away with having no blue in your project bag at all, because it's just my color. So this little label is just a signature, and I decided to sew it in by machine after all, because it is so much easier to do it by machine. That made me look at all my other project bags that I already had in my stash, and I wanted to just hand stitch those labels on. So I've done it, for instance, with this bag, and I've done it for 2 bags, and I felt like it doesn't look as neat. It is a pain to do it because you know, these fabrics, they want to be together, because I'd already finished the bag completely and then tried to add the label, so that was really annoying, whereas it was really easy to add it like in the process of making the bag. So instead I've decided for all the other bags to open up the lining that I usually hand sew together in the bottom, and then still machine stitch it in on the lining. But that means that I have to redo all of the reclose all of the lining pieces, but all the labels are in now. So yeah, so I still have a bit of a job to do in terms of hand stitching my project bags together, but I was so fed up with doing this way that I think it's faster to close the lining, which is just an easy shape, and it's just easier to sew than sewing on the label. So very soon my Etsy store will open, and it is called Knitting Teaspoon, and I think with the information that I have now, that I will open my Etsy store probably next weekend. This will give me some time to take some pictures, or first of all finish all the bags, probably add some more of the very bright ones and to the collection, and also to take some pictures of them with my photography lights. For those of you who don't know, I've invested for this podcast in some photography lights that I've never used for anything else actually, but now that I have them, I might as well use them for taking some properly lit pictures of my products for my shop. And yeah, I probably need some time to do that. I'm still in a bit of a weird phase of applying for a job, so this takes up a lot of time. Well, not so much time as a lot of energy, I think. So it cuts my days into really small parts in which I don't necessarily want to set up for sewing. So you can probably see that from the fact that I've gotten so far on my 2 socks. Knitting is a craft that you can really just pick up, put in your bag, and get going. As soon as you have like a minute to spare, you can pick up your knitting and start working on it a little bit, and then just put it down as soon as you have to, and you have a little bit of progress. And with sewing it's not so much so, because you have to set up your machine and clear out space, and there's cutting involved, and a lot of times you have to shift from the cutting or the sewing to the to your ironing board, and then just press the seams and everything. So it just takes a lot of time to get going, and mostly it's so much easier to keep going once you're set up, but it takes some time to set up your ironing board, or to set up your sewing machine and everything. And I just like to sew if I have a larger time span to get sewing, and not for knitting. It's okay if I only have a few minutes, then I will only knit for a few minutes. But if I only have a few minutes, I won't sew for a few minutes, because I won't get any sewing finished, and I don't like to pause halfway. So I think that's all the crafting for this week. Oh no, there's one more thing that I want to share with you, because when I bought all the embroidery equipment, I got a little present from the store. I think it's just some promo item, but I really thought it was adorable, so I will just get it for you. So I got this cute little sheep, and I just love it. And actually the store is called, well, how we would call the black sheep, but this is obviously not a black sheep, it's white. Yes, you didn't see it wrong, it's actually a white sheep. But I thought it was so cute, and it's just a how do you call it? This is a key ring, so this is a key hanger? I don't know. Key ring decoration. So thank you so much for teaching me that the singleton word of dice is a die. And if someone could tell me like what this kind of thing, what you would call this type of item, like something that would hang from your keychain, is called, that would be very nice too. So you live and you learn, and you podcast and you don't know the words apparently, but hey, that's okay. So thank you guys so much for joining me, and I hope to see you next week. I hope to know a little bit more about possibly having a job, or I don't know. I've had a lot of interviews this week, and I hope some of them are going to result in, or at least one of them is going to result in positive feedback, and that they want to hire me. But who knows? We'll see. For now, I'm just going to stay positive and hope that it will all get sorted out soon. So have a lovely week. If you're in the same kind of weather as I am, I hope you guys enjoy it. I personally would have preferred a little less heat, but you know, maybe you guys have a pool or anything that you can enjoy with this kind of heat. And maybe you're not experiencing a heat wave at all, so in that case, just enjoy life, I guess. So I hope to see you next week. Bye!